A very good morning to all the wonderful delegates present over here. I welcome you to this beautiful campus of Symbiosis International University. I hope you all got an opportunity to witness a scenic and aesthetic university campus with natural settings, abundant greenery, vast biodiversity, and serene landscape which is treat to the eyes as well as the soul. We are all here gathered for the track 3 of the pre-conference symposium of SYMHEALTH 2023, a national conference for stakeholder engagement for integrated healthcare futuristic approach. Prior to the session, here are a few announcements. For the smooth conduct of the proceedings, we request you to kindly switch off your mobile phones or at least put them on the silent mode. All delegates are requested to follow COVID-appropriate behavior. You must have all registered at the registration counter and given your signatures today. Please note that the delegates who have done spot registrations, your signatures will be taken at the spot counter on both the days. MBBS doctors, kindly note that SYMHEALTH 2023 conference has Maharashtra Medical Council credits. For availing of the MMC credits, we request you to register and sign on both the days at the MMC registration counter located in the registration area. In case of any queries, our help desk is located at the Faculty of Medical and Health Sciences foyer for your service. As a part of Green Initiative, all the delegates will receive a SYMHEALTH 2023 e-participation certificate on their registered email IDs, provided that they fill in the feedback form. Last day to fill in the feedback form is May 31st, 2023. Refreshing tea and coffee would be served to the delegates just outside the lecture hall during the tea break. Lunch menu is curated by Symbiosis School of Culinary Arts and is arranged at the Symbi 8 Lovely Hilltop Canteen. Bus arrangements for transporting you to Hilltop campus will be shared at the end of the session. We have arranged today's networking dinner, which will start at 7:30 p.m. at Symbi 8 Pendal area. Delegates who wish to join the networking dinner and did not register can register themselves near the SIBM Pendal area by paying ₹1,000. Kindly note, tomorrow on 29th April 2023, registration will start in the morning at 8 a.m. at the Central Library, SIU Hilltop campus. Gents and ladies' restrooms are located outside the venue and signages have been displayed to guide you through the same. We are located in the high-tech SUHRC building. God forbid that you require any medical help, kindly contact the emergency number being displayed on the screen, 955-252-5652. I repeat, 955-252-5652. You might be interested to know where the poster presentations are. All the presenters of the posters are requested to display their posters today by 3 p.m. around the Symbi 8 area at the Hilltop campus. There are volunteers to help you for putting up the posters. You are requested to have a look at the posters displayed in the Symbi 8 Hilltop canteen in the Hilltop during the tea break after the inaugural ceremony. Thank you.
Wherever the art of medicine is loved, there is also a love for humanity. Good morning, everyone. I, Revati Nanda, student of MBA in Hospital and Healthcare Management from Symbiosis Institute of Health Sciences, Symbiosis International University, will be a host for this session. SYMHEALTH, the annual mega event with a legacy of 25 years, attracts over 1,200 delegates from all the verticals of healthcare, such as the doctors, medico-legal experts, insurance, IT professionals, NGO, hospital administrators, and clinical research professionals from all over India and abroad. The pre-conference symposium is a part of SYMHEALTH 2023, and it addresses the contemporary issues of pharmaceutical sectors. Now, let's proceed to the first session of the day on regulatory landscape of pharmaceutical industries. Pharmaceutical regulations have been defined as the combination of legal, administrative, and technical measures that the government take to ensure the safety, efficacy, and the quality of the medicines, as well as the relevance and accuracy of the product information. The Indian pharmaceutical industry is considered one of the fastest growing sectors in the country and exports medicines to more than 200 countries in the world, including strictly regulated markets such as the US, Europe, and Japan. The Indian pharmaceutical industry, being the pharmacy of the world, is also engaged in contract manufacturing, research, and clinical trials. To elaborate more on this topic, we would now like to call on the stage the speaker for the session, Dr. Manjusha Rajarshi ma'am, founder of Regulus Healthcare, Mumbai. She is the regulatory and clinical research consultant and founder of Regulus Healthcare. She was the head of regulatory affairs and clinical research at Surdia Pharmaceuticals. Ma'am was the clinical research associate at Aventis and assistant manager at Unichem Laboratories Limited. She has done her Doctor of Philosophy in Pharmacology from the Open International University of Complementary Medicines, Kolkata, a diploma in IPR patents, trademarks, and copyrights from the Bioinformatics Institute of India. She obtained her master's degree in pharmaceutical sciences from the University of Mumbai. She has also done a PG diploma in health promotion from the Public Health Foundation of India, New Delhi. We welcome you, ma'am, to take over the session.
So in today's session in the morning, as the introduction was given, we have a lot of things that is happening in the regulatory sector. And it is very important that the regulatory sector is strengthened so that the industry, in turn, is also strengthened. So in my presentation today, I will be talking about what makes regulations very different for drugs, because it's a different commodity. What are the regulatory principles that govern when we are deciding the law? What are the framework of the law? And what are the challenges that we face? And in the conclusion of the session. So first of all, we all must understand that drug is a special commodity. It is not like a commodity for a soap or clothes. It is a commodity which is made to be taken only on purpose, and it is always prescribed by a medical professional. And that makes drugs a very different commodity than the rest of the commodities available. It also has to be available on the shelf when it is licensed to be on the shelf, and it can be only sold by the approved retailers. Therefore, drugs in general are a special commodity. So when we talk about regulations, for the drugs to be onto the market, there are three important aspects that govern. One is the facts. So what are the known facts available about this product? What are the public reactions to these facts? If there are some issues that has happened, and based on that, if there are some future consequences, how do we strengthen the law and the framework? Therefore, the public influence in the regulation becomes extremely important aspects. So sometimes there could be a product onto the market, it has a lot of side effects, or there are some tragedies, and there is a public outcry. There could be some distribution malpractices, because of which public at large is suffering. There could be quality issues of the product, and there could be price issues. And therefore, the government, who is responsible for making the regulations, try to make it very defensive. So we always say that the laws in the country are very difficult, they're very rigid. So basically, what the government is trying is not to have a repeat of the same consequences or the issues that has happened in the past. And therefore, they are extremely rigid, they're defensive, and new policies keep taking place based on the new experiences that have been observed. Therefore, the combination for a pharmaceutical regulation is legal, so it has to have a legal framework. It should be administrative. It means there has to be an officiating officer which has been approved by the law who is going to implement that. And it also has to be a technical measures, because drug as a commodity has also a lot of technical issues attached with it. It has to ensure the safety, efficacy, and the quality of the medicine, and must verify the relevance and accuracy of the information that has been given. It means there should not be any misguided claims about the product. There should be no ambiguity that should be known to the public or to the healthcare professional. Therefore, drug control is nothing but is a social and public health measure which is enforced by the government for public welfare. And it needs to ensure, the government needs to ensure that the products that are available into the market are safe, they're effective, they're of a good quality, they're used for appropriate indications. There should be no misuse of the medicines, and accurate information is available to the stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, here it also means a doctor and also the patient. So therefore, we have laws, we have regulations, we have guidances, and we have policies. Now, all of them are used intermittently. So what are laws? It is a binding rule. And this binding rule has to be used for conducting any standards. The regulations must be passed through a legislator. So in the democracy, we have a parliament. So parliament must pass the laws and the regulations. The guidance and the policies are the framework of this regulation to help people understand, specifically the stakeholders like industry, doctors, etc. What does it mean and how do they follow it up? And policies are the formal opinions. For example, we need to conduct clinical trials for all new products. This is a policy. Okay? But in the law, we also know which products require clinical trials and for which products there could be an exemption. Okay? And therefore, this is called as a regulatory adjustments. So for example, for cancer drugs, we never conduct a study in healthy volunteers. Though our law says that you have to conduct phase 1 studies for all new drugs. But for cancer, we do not conduct it because they're cytotoxic medicines. We always conduct in the patient. So this is what is called as a regulatory adjustment, right? So therefore, how should be an effective regulatory program should be? Is there something which is very ideal? So no law in the world is ideal, even today, okay? We are still, every country is working to better their law structure. So the first one is, it should have some control measures. So law is not there to discipline people, okay? Law is there to catch you and to penalize you when you do not follow a certain guidelines or rules. Right? For example, we have to put a belt while driving. That's a law. Right? But if you are not following it, then you will be fined. Right? So what should a law look like? So it should contain all the control measures. What are those control measures? To prevent and avoid any unacceptable risks. As I said, because drugs are a special commodities. It has to be taken only on a purpose. If you have a drug which is very effective, but it is causing a lot of side effects, then in that case, such a drug cannot be into the market. And also to intervene or respond when problems occur. Therefore, we have sometimes a batch recall. Sometimes we have a product being taken out of the market for side effects. So our law should have that provision that if there are any risk, the law should be capable of withdrawing or recalling a product. And it should also enable continuous improvement so that we evaluate each program and we have an objective that has been achieved and we continuously improve our law. We cannot have one law that has been implemented and have no changes in it. It has to continue to evolve based on the time that we are in. Okay? Therefore, the regulatory framework all across the globe is always in a process of dynamic flux because new things are happening every day and our law should be a part of that continuous process. So who is covered under the drug laws? So we have manufacturers, of course. We have distributors of the drugs and medicines, retail pharmacies and the chemists, allied manufacturers. So we are dependent on many other manufacturers who make packaging, who make foils. So all of them, ampule bottles. So these are also allied manufacturers who also control and come under the ambit of the law. Clinical trial partners, ethics committees, investigators, researchers, all of them are under the law at some point or the other. As we know, the drug development is a big process. It has a lot of stakeholders, and therefore all the partners who are involved into this process are also under the ambit of the law. It includes the developmental lab. So we have labs who develop a bulk drug. We have labs who develop the finished formulations. So we have small-scale manufacturers or the CMOs who are available. We have testing laboratories, packaging units, clinical research organizations, ethics committees, therapeutic unit distribution hubs, medical fraternity, drug promotion and advertising. All of them are under the regulatory framework, and they have certain specific regulations that are attached to their scope of work. So in each country, you have a national regulatory authorities. So they are the one who are actually the one who are a mediator for implementing the law. They are to be issued by the administrative. I can't see this, the light is dropping here. Is there a way by which we can reduce? It's coming on the screen, I can't read. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So it should be issued by an administrative agency through formal procedure. The system should be transparent and permit inputs from all relevant interest groups and the individuals. The regulations have to be binding, and therefore it has to have a specific delegation. You cannot have drug laws to be implemented by some another authority. You have to have a specific national authority which is responsible for drug control. And therefore, all of them, the technical term is national regulatory authorities or competent authorities, as it is called in the rest of the world. Most of them come under the Ministry of Health and allied authorities, and they are further divided into human medicine and animal health. We have to also understand that the drugs are also important for animal health, and they are also controlled specifically for those animals which are used by the human consumption. So which are the products or which are the activities that require licensing? So all product licensing, whether it is registration or marketing authorization, they require approval from the national authorities. You have manufacturing licenses to manufacture the product. That too requires approval from the licensing authorities. Any import licenses, when you want to import a product or a finished or unfinished product, you require import licenses. All the clinical research activities from phase 1 to phase 4, they require approval from the authorities, and so also cosmetics manufacturing and imports. So people will ask, why cosmetics? Because they are also one which is a commodity which has been applied, and there could be a lot of side effects. Therefore, cosmetics are also involved and have been engaged currently under the drug laws. So the kind of product approvals that have been given are for human medicine, they're given for the veterinary medicine, they're also given for herbal products or phytopharmaceuticals, and also for alternate medicine or traditional medicinal product. Now, various countries have a different regulations when it comes to herbal or phytopharmaceuticals. So in India, we have Ayush Board, which talks about Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani medicine. So if you have any product that is being defined under these compendia of Ayurveda, Siddha, or Unani, you have Ayush Directorate, which gives you the approval. However, if you have any other plant-based product which is not under Ayush, then it is considered under phytopharmaceutical, and drug and cosmetic regulations are applicable. And therefore, from the new drug and clinical trial rules 2019, phytopharmaceuticals have been defined in our regulation. If you look at US FDA, they do not approve any kind of herbal medicines because they do not believe in herbal medicines. So they call it as a dietary supplements for complementary therapies. While if you look at EMA or the European Medical Agency, they have a committee for herbal medicinal product. And they consider that this is also a product which should be reviewed by the formal process, and therefore they have a committee to review it, and they provide a scientific opinion and recommend its use in the EU or in the European community. When we look at TGA Australia, their herbal substances are also highly regulated, and they call this as a lower risk or a high risk herbal formulations, and it has to be registered exactly as a drug at TGA Australia. In Japan, they call it as a classification system under the Japanese regulations or Japanese traditional medicines, and it has to be listed in Japanese pharmacopoeia. Only then you can get a OTC status. So when we talk about registering a product, what are the different documents that is required? So first of all, we need a lot of very vast documentation on pharmaceutical development of the product and its toxicological information. I'm not going to get into the details of that because that is out of scope of the topic today. But most of the countries follow the CMC or the Module 3 of the ICH, and the preclinical research also as per the ICH guidelines, which must be conducted before we decide to file to the Ministry of Health. So prior to human studies, any new drug, it requires a new drug filing. And once it is filed, it is called as a new drug application or an NDA. These are the international terminologies. Now, at this point, when NDA is filed, the role of the regulatory authorities begins because they will scrutinize the pharmaceutical and toxicological data before allowing any human studies. When it comes to clinical trials and the role of regulatory authorities, they are having a huge responsibility because first of all, they have to understand and they have to follow the principle of public health welfare, that while allowing a conduct of a particular clinical study, we are not endangering anybody in public. Therefore, responsibility of protecting public health by assuring safety, efficacy, and quality of the product is very important. And that's why they will take the opinion based on the pharmaceutical development and toxicological data that has been generated. For all the products, whether it is a human or veterinary medicine, biological product, medical devices, herbals, cosmetics, radiopharmaceuticals, they have to follow the principle of public health welfare and also protecting the public at large. They have to also help at the same time speeding the innovation because we cannot take a long time in reviewing documentation. We have to also speed up the innovation. And we have to make products also affordable for the public, and accurate information should be available in public domain. So what is the principle by which such applications are actually reviewed? So therefore, we have to understand that the clinical research is a highly regulated area today, because it is based on GCP principles, the good clinical practices, as well as the principle of human rights. And therefore, the study conduct requires authorization from the authorities. Every clinical trial must have an objective, and it must demonstrate safety and efficacy of the investigational product. And therefore, we have to write the right way of writing a clinical study protocol, which provides an objective experimental design. It must demonstrate efficacy, that the product has been meant for a particular therapeutic indication and whether it is going to provide that benefit or no. Therefore, it should be adequate and well-controlled investigation. So randomized double-blind placebo-controlled studies are considered the best evidence when it comes to clinical trials. But is placebo always a proper control? So I must tell you that the World Medical Association has declared, as per the Helsinki, that use of placebo control should be avoided when alternative therapy is available for comparison for the ethical purposes. We cannot make a patient devoid of medical treatment. So what is that should be measured in the clinical trials? So a very readily quantifiable parameter should be measured. So for example, hemoglobin. If you have a product which is going to increase the hemoglobin increase is a quantifiable parameter. It must be measured against a comparator or an active or a placebo. There should be a direct measurement, such as blood pressure readings. So if we are dealing with an antihypertensive drugs, our primary objective is reduction in blood pressure. This is a quantifiable objective parameter. Or it could be also a demonstration of reduction of incidence. So for example, if we are having an antiplatelet, which shows reduction in the incidence of myocardial infarction. Now for such a kind of a study, it has to be a long-term study. It cannot be a 3 months or 4 month study. You have to have minimum 3 to 5 years of a study to show reduction of risk. Therefore, authorities need to review a proposal for a clinical trial from all these principles. But are all authorities ready to do that, or are they have enough competence to do that? And therefore, most of the authorities have a special subject expert groups available who would review and give them an advice whether a particular clinical trial can be approved or it requires any amendment or not approved. So these are called as expert committees. So if you have a cardiology product, you will have an expert committee of cardiologists. If you have a product in diabetes, you will have an expert committee of endocrinologists. Therefore, authorities depend for the medical decision for a conduct of clinical trial from these expert groups. The next important function for the regulatory is the drug safety. This is again a very important and a very elaborate topic. I am not going to get into the details of it, but it deals with that no drug is actually devoid of unwanted side effects. But how do you understand the side effects? How do you categorize them? How do you report them? And how do you dissipate this information to the healthcare professional, so he can make a right kind of a choice while prescribing the medicine to his patients. Therefore, authorities need to have a very robust therapeutic safety monitoring system or a pharmacovigilance system. At the same time, the manufacturer at their end also need to have a pharmacovigilance system in place. Now, WHO has mandated that all the countries should have a national pharmacovigilance program to detect any safety issues with the medicines available and take necessary precautions or measures. So it could be giving a warning that a particular drug is likely to cause allergic reactions, for example, or there could be some products which could be having cardiac safety issues which may require withdrawal from the market. Apart from that, there are laws which are also there for controlled substances. So any possession, trafficking, or manufacturing of narcotic or psychotropic substances are restricted and highly regulated under a separate act across all the countries of the world. Consumption and possession of habit-forming substances such as marijuana are also prohibited by the law. And this is also governed and executed and regulated by the regulatory authorities. Apart from this, they are also involved in providing import-export permissions for the medicines. It is not only for the domestic market that the regulatory authorities work, because the pharmaceutical industry is very huge and the products are made available across the globe. So there are certain import and export regulations which is covered under the drug laws. Every country has its own regulations, and there are certain common documents which are required all across when you are involved into import or export of medicines. It requires a proof of registration of the product in the country of export. It must have a marketing authorization or a free sale certificate or certificate of pharmaceutical product in the country of manufacture. A certificate of analysis with release specifications is must. Label copies, invoice, and other related administrative documents are required. So if these documents are available, these are the basic documents. Apart from that, there are several other documents that are required. But based on that, an import or export permission can be granted by the authorities for a specific product for a specific period of time. It is not a permanent permission that has been given. So when you see, we have a lot of laws. At the same time, there are a lot of challenges. So first of all, cost of innovation. We all want new medicines, but we know that the research costs a huge amount of money. And when you have innovative products, it also requires a huge amount of time in reviewing those documents for the innovative medicine and bring it to the market. In certain countries, there are still very weaker patent laws, and therefore not all innovators want to introduce the product in such countries. There are supply chain issues. There are changing regulations. So you decide to develop a product, say, in 2015, but by 2023, the law has changed. And you may have to do additional experimentation to be in line with that law. There are governmental controls. There are need for skilled workforce, because for all this, you require a manpower, and that manpower should be updated and should be skilled with the new technique and the new knowledge that is required. There are also geopolitical issues that happen, and because of which we have to be very careful about what are the exact challenges that we have and how to have a supply agreement and the manufacturing ongoing when you have political issues or like wars that are ongoing. And there are, of course, consumer expectations. All consumer wants the best product at the lowest cost. And that is always a great challenge when you want to develop and provide innovative treatments. What are the risks that we have? We have risk because the population is huge. There are very economic issues, social issues, and there is always emergence of a poor quality generics. I'm not saying generics are bad, they are very good, but sometimes you also have poor quality generics available in the market. They do not provide a therapeutic effective dose. At the same time, they can also cause a lot of side effects. Price controls is another risk when you have a product and there is no other alternative available. The government can always control the prices of the drugs. There can be a data breach that can happen when there are patent laws are weak and there is no data exclusivity available. And there's always a chance of counterfeit medicines available in the market. With all this, if you look at the industry today, worldwide revenue of the pharmaceutical market is projected to be 1,163 billion US dollars. And India is racing ahead, and we are also expected to grow at a 12% annual growth and to have $130 billion by 2030. It means in the next 7 years, we will be a very big players in pharmaceutical industry. There are new digital and AI-assisted programs that are available. We are also engaging patients through these digital platforms. And therefore, as I said, we have to also acquire new skills, and we need a workforce who can work in this space. There are biotechnology, biological and targeted therapies that are currently under R&D pipeline. And therefore, we can have many innovative medicines available in the market at a given cost for certain therapeutic areas. So if I have to conclude my presentation, I would say that the pharma industry is huge and is highly regulated. Government controls in terms of regulations, compliance, and price issues are going to continue. We have to continue to work in this space with all these constraints. Generics are going to dominate a certain world markets. That also we have to be acceptable to have them around. There's going to be an ever-increasing demand for the trained and skilled workforce, and drug regulation shall continue to be stricter, and the compliance requirement will be very high. All this is necessary because we want to bring in very effective, safe, and quality products at affordable prices into the market. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I shall be very happy to answer.
Good morning, ma'am. At the onset, thank you very much for the nice presentation. Ma'am, recently one cough syrup has been banned in US. That was an Indian product. So my query is whether based on that event, that product will be banned in India, or DGCI will take some action against it, or whether new testing will start with that drug. What will happen?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So when you have any quality-related issues in any other country from a product which has been exported from India, the DGCA comes in the play. So they will have to, I think the investigations are already on, if I'm not mistaken. So the first one will be to recall the batch. If a particular product is being marketed, first and foremost, one has to do is to recall the batch from wherever it is distributed, provide a public notice, which I'm sure it must have been done in Africa. I think in Africa, right? Yeah. And so also the authorities here would visit the plant. I think, if I'm not mistaken, their manufacturing license was revoked. And they were doing whatever necessary investigations that need to be done. So in law, if you look at it, there's already a provision that has been there. Now what happens, unfortunately, in India is the implementation. So if you look at our law, we have all the provisions available for if there's a substandard drug or if there is safety issues, what can be done. So everything is detailed in the law. Now what happens in our country specifically is the implementation is an issue. So in this, if I'm not mistaken, for that company, their export license was also revoked. So they cannot make any further exports. As I said in my presentation, because export licenses have a time limit. It is not a permanent blanket permission.
By the DCGI.
Yeah.
But see, I'm a member secretary of the ethics committee of Symbiosis. So I have some doubts in the reviewing the proposals of the researcher. So for the DCGI and for the allopathic drugs, there is no problem because DCGI has given the strict guideline. But for the Ayurvedic drugs and for the nutritional products, so there is no certified guidelines or any regulations. So, and even our ethics committee and chairman sir, Dr. Ganga Khedkar, always see that for the Ayurvedic drugs, we have very limitations for this committee. So we have to approach to the Ayush ministry and all. So what is the exact guideline for this Ayush drugs and nutritions?
So you are right, because for Ayush and nutraceuticals, they don't have any structured guidelines released. But Ayush has released one document, how to conduct clinical trials for Ayurvedic products. And if you look at it, it is following the similar pattern of GCP studies, which has been there by drugs and cosmetic regulations. So you can, as an ethics committee, you can always refer to that guideline and consider it for Ayurvedic product, because they need to follow the basic GCP principles for sure. When it comes to nutraceuticals, OECD guidelines are the one which you need to look into. And if you read nutraceutical documentation of the law very minutely, there is one sentence that says that any clinical trial of a nutraceutical study should follow the regulations as given by the Drugs Controller's Office. So I think for both of them, you can look into the GCP and the DCI guidelines, and accordingly you can review the documents.
Good morning, ma'am. This is Harshal Nikam from Serum Institute. So when we compare the pharmacopoeias, let's say Indian pharmacopoeia against the European pharmacopoeia, or British pharmacopoeia, or United States pharmacopoeia, then we see that those are stricter guidelines compared to our Indian pharmacopoeia and guidelines. So what is exactly the parameters considered by Indian government, let's say DCGI, while preparing the pharmacopoeia? Are we considering less stricter guidelines compared to all other? Because many times when we produce products here as per Indian guidelines, and when we appear for the audits in EMA or US FDA, we are not able to expect their we are not able to meet their expectations. So why not we can have the stricter guidelines as per US pharmacopoeia or EMA or TGA? Thank you.
So it's a very difficult question, but I'll try to answer because it's a difficult question and it's a little gray area, okay? So if you look at Indian pharmacopoeia, we have inherited it from the British pharmacopoeia. Okay, because our drug laws came before we got independence, and we have copied and inherited what was then the first Indian pharmacopoeia, and our pharmacopoeias were made which will suit the Indian manufacturers. So based on what is available then, so we were doing only UV spectrometer, we were not doing MS, for example. So that is how our pharmacopoeia has evolved. So basically, the principle the government has while making of a pharmacopoeia or the Pharmacopoeia Commission is that we should have the monographs that is easily implementable, whether it is a micro, small, medium, or a large giant. Therefore, you will see that the specifications are a bit wider, and also the requirement of the test are also a much little, are not so many. Now, you are from vaccine business. Okay, and I know that for vaccine business is very difficult because everything is set in a monograph and there is no clear-cut guidelines. So as far as when the exports have to be done, we have to make a product as per the export guidelines, what is required in their country. So most of the manufacturers, they make batches compliant to Indian pharmacopoeia because that is a law. If you want to market a product in India, it has to be compliant with the Indian pharmacopoeia, and they have an EP or a USP compliance for the products which are to be exported. So in the coming years, if I'm not mistaken, based on my current interaction with the authorities, Indian pharmacopoeia, many of the monographs will be changed, and they will be at par with the US pharmacopoeia. Yeah?
Thank you, ma'am. I would now request Lieutenant General Dr. Tutakane sir to felicitate Dr. Manjusha Rajarshi ma'am.